First stop on the train is Chief Justice Roberts. Why? But not just because he's the chief of the Supreme Court, but because any appeal that comes out of the DC, the Trump administration, by claiming that the Supreme Court has power under what is referred to as the All Writs Act, but that's very narrow in application. It doesn't apply to the facts of this case. Appellate courts goes firstly to Chief Justice Roberts on an emergency application. He could have denied this on his own, but he decided, I guess, anything related to Trump, he's going to throw it back to the entirety of the 9 justices of the panel.
Trump's legal world is imploding, and it's happening faster than anyone expected. With 2 crushing rulings in one day, SCOTUS may have just cleared the path to a criminal trial. The myth of presidential immunity is dead, and Trump's future has never looked more uncertain. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great, thank you so much. Now, back to the video.
The Supreme Court just ruled the president has absolute immunity for core constitutional powers, however, not for unofficial acts.
Or acts of the president. And that innovation doesn't work if it's not, the judiciary is not independent.
Not everything the president does is official, end quote. So a big question here is, when was President Trump acting in his official capacity?
The notion that a former president had complete immunity from prosecution for acts committed while in office was overturned in the first ruling. The argument that Trump was immune from judicial examination because of his presidency had been vigorously promoted by his administration, especially in relation to the events of January 6th and suspected meddling in the 2020 election outcomes. However, the court made it quite clear in a majority judgment that was strongly worded: no one is above the law, not even a former president.
The way it works in court, a little bit of a legal breakout session, is if you have a temporary restraining order, which is only in place for a short amount of time, in this case, it's only in place for about 5 days, you wait until there's a preliminary injunction of one Hampton Dellinger, who ran in an emergency injunction and obtained a temporary restraining order from a federal court judge in the District of Columbia, at which time then the courts of appeal have jurisdiction. They generally don't have jurisdiction over temporary restraining orders.
In addition to Trump, this decision conveyed a chilling message to any future president who might try to use the presidency as a weapon for their own benefit. For years, legal experts have argued over whether the Constitution gives presidents any unqualified legal rights after their terms are up, in the hopes that the Supreme Court would provide at least partial immunity that might halt or even reverse ongoing criminal investigations. Trump's attorneys heavily relied on that ambiguity. However, the court remained unfazed. They stressed in their ruling that the president cannot act as a barrier to justice. The ramifications are enormous. Charges, evidence, and cases that were previously in legal limbo.
Hampton Dellinger takes the appeal, or the Trump administration takes the appeal, and the response from Hampton Dellinger is, I got 5 days to get to a preliminary injunction. I just want to stay in my job. And the trial court judge hears the entirety of the case and rules on the preliminary injunction, which is one step up in the injunction food chain. All right, that's where we are so far. Gorsuch and Alito don't like it. They believe in the unitary power of the president. Their comment, and I'll read you from aspects of it, their comment in their order was a president shouldn't be forced to work with somebody for even 5 days that they don't want to work for.
Can now be pursued by federal prosecutors. The second blow followed. In a different but no less significant decision, the Supreme Court declined to restrict the use of crucial evidence pertaining to Trump's purported attempts to rig the 2020 election that prosecutors had gathered through subpoenas and search warrants. The court disagreed, finding that the evidence was legally obtained and admissible in court, despite Trump's team's claims that executive privilege and poor procedure tainted most of the material. This ruling makes it possible for material that could be harmful to be used in any of Trump's several pending cases. When taken as a whole, these decisions mark a dramatic change in the legal environment around Trump. He has been using his legal battles as a shield and a weapon for months, using accusations of persecution and political witch hunts to mobilize his supporters, while avoiding criminal responsibility.
He's done nothing wrong other than he's the wrong party. Now, I know Hampton Dellinger reasonably well. I just happened to be wearing my Duke Law polo shirt today. I played pickup basketball with Hampton Dellinger at Duke, not because he went to Duke. Oh, here we go. What about due process? What about the fact that the statute says you can't fire the guy or the person unless there's a for cause, meaning he did something wrong? And talk about the intersection of law and politics. Hampton Dellinger is the product of the intersection of law and politics. His mother, the late Ann Dellinger, was a titan in the world of the School of Government at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill.
However, he has now been given a blow by the country's top court that even his most devoted followers will find difficult to recover from. He is more vulnerable than ever legally. The consequences might be equally devastating on a political level. There has already been a strong response from all major parties. Legal experts are referring to it as a watershed moment for the rule of law. The rulings are being hailed by Democrats as a long overdue reckoning. The significance of the decisions is even being acknowledged by some conservative commentators who are often reluctant to disagree with Trump. The rulings are a clarion call that the judiciary won't be bullied or bent to political will, according to a former federal prosecutor. Simply put, this is what accountability looks like, stated another commentator. Trump's response was typical. Angry social media tweets, all caps tirades about election interference and biased justices, and new charges that the deep state is planning a coup. However, the reality on the ground cannot be altered by the bluster. These decisions remove significant barriers that had been impeding investigations in Georgia, Washington, D.C., and New York, and they provide prosecutors strong new weapons. Potential indictments and trials are approaching at a higher rate than before. The political ramifications extend beyond the courtroom and are just as significant. Although Trump is the presumed Republican nominee for 2024, his campaign could be ruined by this legal assault. Undecided voters, particularly in swing states, may begin to see him as a seriously compromised candidate rather than a misunderstood outsider if more damaging evidence comes to light and court processes progress. There are increasing rumors about other candidates and backup plans, even within the Republican Party. The nation is also sent a broader message by the Supreme Court's rulings. Even at the highest levels of authority, accountability counts. Many Americans have witnessed influential people avoid accountability for far too long, which has eroded their faith in the system and caused widespread skepticism. Some of that trust might be restored as a result of these decisions. They send a message that even in the face of a politically volatile figure like Donald Trump, the court would not back down. In many respects, this is the start of a new chapter in Trump's legal career. The Supreme Court's precedent-setting decisions have given prosecutors the confidence to proceed without worrying about being held back or fired. What used to seem like far-off trials are now imminent. Trump's legal stronghold is collapsing and might not last the year.